it was explicit about the fact that many of the issues we were discussing were issues about, as it were, commitment in general. What follows from accepting something else.
Yeah, yeah. And then you can sort of single down on one. Yeah, I think I would like that as a special case. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
A question I will avoid to myself. So I have the really strong intuition that ontological commitment is supposed to be extension. So when a sentence commits us to the evening star, it also thereby has committed us to the morning star. So
that's consistent with the intentional too. Intentional account. But let's go with yours. Extensional. Yeah.
But maybe we can go back to that afterwards. So here's a variant on what you proposed that sounds to me appealing and will produce the result that I want to reproduce. So it will be something like accepting there is an x such that x is f involves committing to f's. Now let me explain what involves means and what commitment to means. So involves is something like x involves y is a component of x. So for example, when we say being glad that P involves believing that P, you cannot be glad that P without believing that P. So that there's a sense in which believing that P is a component of being glad that P. And so now I want to say that committing to F's is a component in the same sense of accepting that there is an x such that x is f. Now, what is committing to? I'm thinking of it as a sui generis attitude, psychological attitude.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit like believing in, which is different from believing that, right? We say believing in God, believing in truth.
Okay, yeah.
That's it's a psychological attitude, but it's not like believing that. It's a bit mysterious what exactly believing in is, but committing to will be something like believing in, but since it's a technical term and we introduce it into the language and we decide just how it will behave, we determine that it will behave such that it does allow substitution. There won't be failure of substitution. So believing in God does not entail believing in Jimmy's favorite divinity, Jimmy's favorite whatever.
Right, because belief is hyperintentional.
Believing in is hyperintentional.
Yeah.
But we will define committed to such that if someone is committed to God, then someone is also committed to Jimmy's favorite divinity.
Mm.
So it will be like believing in star. It's just something, a verb that we're introducing into augmented English. And now we're saying this is what ontological commitment is. Accepting there is an x such that x is f involves committing to, or believing in star is a component of accepting. That's this will produce the result that ontological commitment is extensional, and it's kind of sort of intuitive to me.
That does sound intuitive to me, but then there are the problems. I mean, once you apply it to ontological commitment talk, you would get some of the consequences that I was trying to outline at the beginning. I'm thinking maybe there's a way to avoid them, but at least sort of taking it at face value, it looks like you would get some of the possibly counterintuitive consequences. So you might not. So the Odin exists and Santa exists. To you, that might sound fine that they have the same commitments.
Right.
It's less. I mean, it's more odd if I extended had a longer proof which had as a conclusion. There might be, maybe you can reject the premise in that proof, but if the proof is sound, it has as a conclusion that the sentence "there are chairs" will commit us to the universal set, the set of everything.
Oh, because of the implication principle.
Yeah, so you would have to deny that.
Right. Okay, so can you put on the slide on the implication principle? Because I kind of...
How do we do this? It was far.
It was kind of,
there,
yes,
right.
there you go. It was kind of, I don't know, there was something, I had mixed feelings about it.
I do have, let me just add before you start to convey your mixed feelings. My mixed feelings are that is talking about the implications. I would want to restrict it. But I think that a version of that principle would work where implications would not be just any other old implication, maybe a relevant implication or something. So in the case I considered with the red roses and roses, those would be relevant implications.
Yes.
But let me hear what yours are.
So suppose I denied this. I denied the implication principle.
Yeah, then you couldn't get that argument off the ground.
Sorry, which?
Yeah, you would have blocked the argument. Yeah, if you deny it.
Right. Now, how do I deny it plausibly? That's the question. So suppose I say that there are red roses commits us to red roses. It also commits us to roses. Now, the reason it commits us to roses is not that it entails there are roses. That is not the reason why it commits us to roses. It commits us to roses because the state of affairs, not the sentence, not the proposition, the state of affairs of there being roses is necessitated by the state of affairs of there being red roses. Sorry, the state of affair of there being roses is necessitated by the state of affairs of there being red roses. Or maybe just because roses are, being a rose is a determinable of which being a red rose is a determinant. So something like that. The principle will be, it will commit us to all these other things, but not because of its implications, but because of the necessitation relations among between the thing. The only thing that is immediately commits us to, and other things. Okay, that wasn't very well put at all.
No, I think that might be ways to. So the state of affairs one, where one state of affairs necessitates another state of affairs. I think that, I'm worried that that's just another way of formulating it. I would have to think about whether the proof would go through on that one, but it may just be because it's very, very similar to saying.
Right. The key is to say that there are red roses commits us to roses, but it doesn't commit us to roses because it implies there are roses.
Right.
There's some other story to tell.
Yeah. In that case, of course, one would have to see what that could be a similar proof. So obviously the proof as stated will be blocked. Yeah. No. So it's good to suggest that maybe just to look at whether that would be other. It would have to be consistent, of course, with the extensional approach. So you can't have all these fancy. Actually, the principle I was suggesting with the relevant implications might not even be a candidate because the extensional approach sort of puts some constraints on the kinds of principles that you could endorse. But some of your suggestions might work. And so the question is whether there then is another proof. Yeah, that would be worth taking into consideration. The alternatives to that, or ways of blocking the implication principle. Yeah.
Yes. So that's maybe that's the key. For if you want to save the extensionalism about you have to deny the implication principle. That seems to be.
And plus, you would also have to deviate quite a bit from at least some of the most famous quotes in Quine's on there is where he says. So one of the quotes he says. Pegasus commits us to an ontology containing Pegasus and however he talks about numbers and so on. That's one of the famous quotes. And anyway, so he explicitly seems to think that when we have false sentences, it can have different kinds of commitments. That may again just be a way that he's sort of speaking loosely, but you do have some bullets to bite if you go for the extensional approach.
Yeah, no, that sounds right.
But other than that, I think it's the most promising one. Only because that is sort of what people take it to be when they really go in and do metaphysics. They don't care about all the other cases.
Right.
They just care about they want an answer to the question what exists,
right.
And so they don't care about the false sentences ultimately.